I'm recording this meeting. If you are welcome to have your camera off at this point or at any point during the meeting. Um, I'm going to begin the meeting with about 25 minutes of going through this agenda. And then we'll have a little bit of time for questions, and then after questions, we'll go into concrete action steps that we can take. And hopefully people on this call will want to join us in taking um, action steps. So context, priorities. I've listed here PEC non-negotiables, and these are the things that I believe, that the PEC believes, and hopefully you will join us in our beliefs. We're going to give you a little bit of history of the law firm that is running the negotiations, talk about how the process is going, and talk about supporting NPS educators. I do want to mention that there are a number of elected officials in the room tonight. I will not call on anyone who doesn't have their hand raised, but I'm glad to have people joining in and listening. And with that, I am going to keep going. Okay, so as I said, I'm Allison Lobron. I'm the founder of the Parent Educator Collaborative. The PEC formed in the summer of 2020. There were a couple of parents and myself who were kind of watching the return to learn plans unfold. And I'm a former public school teacher myself, and my heart is always in the public schools, and I talk to a lot of teachers and was starting to feel like the things that my teacher friends were saying to me did not necessarily match the things that I was hearing when I went to school committee meetings or listened to the administration. And so in addition to this mismatch, I was also observing a spike in anti-teacher rhetoric, both from community members and from people who spoke at these public meetings. And so for all of those reasons, a group of us, educators and parents, came together. We used to meet on Saturday mornings on Zoom all throughout the pandemic, to try and think about how we can create create communication channels that didn't exist between educators and decision makers in NPS. I think any good organization, you really have to be hearing from the people on the front lines in order to be able to be making really good decisions. And eventually we became an official partnership between Newton community members and the Newton Teachers Association. I love to talk about the PEC anytime you want to hear about it. So some more context. We are in the middle of a national teacher shortage. So this is not a problem that is unique to Newton. This is a nationwide problem. The number of educators who are leaving the field, both at retirement age and also at younger and younger ages, has gone up exponentially since the pandemic. And the number of educators who are entering teacher prep programs have gone down drastically. And so that's the national context for what's happening in our country right now. And then layered on top of that is, obviously, if you are here, you're concerned about what's happening in Newton right now. And a fair contract is essential for retaining and attracting educators. So this data right here, obviously we really want to be a data-driven school district. And one thing that I learned over the summer was that Newton Public Schools has not been collecting nuanced data on staff attrition. That was one thing when Anna Nolan did her round of barbecues over the summer. We hosted one, the PEC hosted one at my house, and this was something that we talked about, that the data that NPS has been collecting, it's not nuanced, so it can't answer all the questions that we have. It can't answer, the data can't answer it yet. Hopefully by this time next year, we'll have really great data, but I spent the summer calling teachers who had left Newton Public Schools. They've gone, some of them have left the profession, but some of them have left to go to neighboring districts where they're have a more reasonable workload and are receiving better compensation. And so while we don't have NPS data to back that up, the conversations that I've had with educators over the last few years and the conversations that I personally had with people who left the district convinced me that that pretty soon we're going to have the data to back up what we know anecdotally. So let's move on to priorities. On November 28th, there was something kind of historic that happened. Anna Nolan and I think it was 5 members of the school committee were invited to a finance committee meeting, a city council finance committee meeting. And Anna Nolan spoke about some of the issues that she sees facing our district. I do not like speaking for other people. I'm going to let you hear directly, but this is the presentation that Dr. Nolan gave at the Finance Committee.
I can speak about the issues at hand if that's what you'd like to do. I don't want to take time from counselors getting their questions asked, but I had the same questions. We haven't really hammered it out deeply together. But I want to thank you all for your warm welcome, and I want to say that I understand the delicate balance that we have for a city financial ecosystem. And I know that the schools are just one part of it. So I want to say that, and I have lots of experience doing that dance over the years and dealing with the pandemic with my former town administrator and town meeting. But I do feel that the schools are a very important part of that financial ecosystem. And as you know, I've been hired to advocate for the schools. So I'm going to do that right here, and I'm going to be pretty passionate about it. I'm hired to love them and build them up into a stronger version of themselves. And in order to take on the next generation version of the Newton Public Schools, we're at a crossroads and a pretty significant transition time period. I just completed a significant audit of the school's programs, processes, and resources and routines. And I went through a rigorous process of cleaning up some issues in the human resources and side of things. And we have found efficiencies, cleaned those up and redeployed them. So using our own resources, we've been able to put forward more than we had hoped for before for a sustainable FY24-25 budget. But the crossroads that we're at, and mind you, I've just finished serving as the New England Superintendents Association president, and I'm now the Tri-County Superintendent Roundtable president. So I go to a lot of different districts and I do review their budgets with them. Newton has some fairly acute needs that I just need to make you aware of in order to upgrade its academic experience and its social emotional learning programs. At most acute at the elementary school in terms of support and intervention, early support and intervention, and at the high school in terms of massively outsized class sizes, particularly in STEM classes. Class sizes average 27 to 32 in those classes. And I want you to know there's been a lot of public discussion about dropping excellence in terms of where we are in the STEM areas for Newton. And I'm going to tell you that that's a big part of it. You can't possibly have class sizes of 32 and have children prepared in the way that they have been prepared when their class sizes were at and 25. And similarly acute is the need for curriculum resources. So those are one-time resources. Many cities and towns capitalize the purchase of textbooks and curriculum resources. So there are some significant needs when you are meeting the wide range of needs with students with disabilities, and the multi-language learner program, which is now upwards heading up to 1,000 students in the Newton schools. And they're all fully included in this district in general education classes, which is a complete celebration. But it does increase the complexity and the needs of the average classroom in order to have the range of materials and instructional resources to meet that complexity of these learning profiles. Particularly, we have to beef up the resources in STEM. So science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The options, the resources, and the materials for students to do real project-based science in the district are not here. And so I want you to know that those things are swirling in my head. And despite finding all those efficiencies, there's not enough efficiencies for us to address all of those types of needs and to do a good job with that. And we also need to fairly compensate the educators who have been toughing it out under these conditions with fewer and fewer support staff to address the needs of the students and the lack of curriculum resources. I know there are a lot of competing needs across the city, but I have to convey to you that for the Newton students, like the rest of the nation, this post-pandemic time period is pretty critical. And Newton did not fare as well as other districts in the region in terms of holding steady against the pandemic crisis academically. And we're not sure yet on the social emotional learning side. We've just begun to screen students systematically this year to determine the depth of those needs. The average increase post-pandemic for cities and towns around us in terms of their allocations and needs in order to meet these complexities has risen, or there's been increases in grant money or other additional resources brought to the table. And I fully intend to bring those types of resources. I haven't had the running room yet to get there. So in the last 2 years in my former district, we were able to write about $7 million worth of grants that we brought in. I'm suggesting some revenue resources to the school committee, but we just need a little bit more time there. So if this debt stabilization allows us to have more options to address the needs, I would advocate for it. But as already discussed tonight, it does not appear to guarantee any particular allocation that we can count on and that we can plan for. But I totally applaud the creative at-bats that Maureen and Mayor Fuller have been putting out here. And I know that they're trying, I think, to obtain additional resources for us. But the acute needs are now. To wait 5 years in order to be able to implement the types of interventions for our earliest learners doesn't make any sense. Those children will be launching into middle school, the cost of their interventions will grow, and we will be subjected to additional special ed costs and to additional outplacements. So I would like to advocate for some sort of manner of accelerating that funding, understanding the cliff, but understanding that that means we accelerate the actions that we take in order to avoid that cliff. 8 years is a long time for me to say that our elementary students can wait, and our high school students certainly can't wait. They'll be gone in 4. So I applaud this effort, and I thank Maureen for the creative revisions. But I need a little bit more detail about year-to-year information, how much each year, and to address these acute needs that are very clear to me have to be addressed immediately.
I want to take a moment. I notice a lot of people have come in since I started talking. I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Allison Lobran. I'm the founder of the Parent Educator Collaborative, and I'm really glad that everyone's here with us tonight. We just
about the
that was Anna Nolan from a presentation she gave to the Newton Council City Finance Committee. back in November, and this is what I heard her say. I heard her say that Newton Public Schools are at a crossroads. I heard her say that Newton didn't fare well academically compared to our neighbors during the pandemic. I heard her say that we have acute and immediate needs that are not being addressed. I heard her say that Newton hasn't invested in the curriculum resources that we need. And I definitely heard her say that we need to fairly compensate the educators who have been working tirelessly in these conditions. And those are all things that I heard her say. Um, so that was what I gathered to be priorities for our new superintendent. I want to talk for a moment about priorities of Newton educators. So as we know, the Newton Teachers Association has been in negotiations for a new contract. It's going on 16 months now. They've been 3 months working without a contract. Um, some of the things that they are bargaining for in this contract are more support for student mental health, addressing the understaffing of Newton schools. There were 100 unfilled teaching assistant positions last year. Why can't they find people for these positions? Because at that time, Newton was paying the least of any district in this area for those positions. And another thing that Newton educators feel strongly about is preserving their time and learning agreement so that they have protected time during the school day to plan for their students, our children, and to collaborate with colleagues. So these are all things that you will see that Newton educators are wanting in their new contract. I shared the superintendent. I shared the Newton Teachers Association. And what I have on this slide is I'm unclear what the priorities of the Newton School Committee are. I'm unclear how student mental health needs will be addressed if this new contract goes into play. I'm unclear about how the understaffing of schools will be addressed. And I'm unclear about immediate needs of students. And I'm definitely unclear about how the current working conditions and the low morale of Newton Public Schools staff will be addressed. So the reason it's unclear, and I'm going to go into detail in a minute, is that the way negotiations have been happening is that there's two pieces to it, and I'll go on to the next slide. There's two pieces to the negotiations that are happening right now. There is the COLA, the cost of living adjustment that that we've been hearing a lot about if you're following the negotiations. The cost of living adjustment that is currently being offered to Newton teachers is a 2.25% increase. And that's meant to offset inflation, which last year was 8%, and I think this year's 4%. So that's the cost of living adjustment. That's one part of what's being negotiated right now. The other part, every other piece has been put in one large package. So all the other things that go into a contract, parental leave, number of working days in a school year, that time and learning agreement, which is protecting teachers' time to spend with preparing for their own students, all of that is in one package. And the way the negotiations have been working is that the school committee has said to the NTA, if you want this 2.25% cost of living adjustment, then you have to accept everything in this package. So it's really hard to know what the priorities are. The way I understand the word negotiation, what that means to me is Group A says, these are the things that are important to us. Group B says, these are the things we can offer you. And you talk and you prioritize. Everyone knows that both sides aren't going to get everything that they're looking for, but you meet somewhere in the middle and both sides have their top priorities met. And that doesn't appear to be the way that these negotiations are working. And the last thing that I think is important to know about negotiations, these negotiations, are that the school committee and the mayor's office have the ability to send information to the entire community. The Newton Teachers Association does not have that ability. If you've joined the PEC mailing list, you can get updates from me. And if you visit the NTA website, you can read the updates there, but there's no way for the NTA to reach the entire community. And the problem is that the communication that's been coming from the school committee and the mayor have statements in them that the NTA doesn't agree with. So it's a problem. And um, people have asked me like, well, isn't there some way to get unbiased information? I just feel like I'm hearing the two sides. And my response to that is there's two sides. The school committee is presenting how they perceive negotiations to be going, and the NTA is presenting how they perceive negotiations to be going. And it's really tough when those two statements don't match. So here are the things that I believe to be true, and the reason I believe them is from talking to all of the educators who are part of the PEC leadership team. And this is what we collectively believe, that working conditions in Newton are not good right now. Morale is very low, and the NTA is bargaining for things that will improve their working conditions. And one thing that people should keep in mind is that educator working conditions equal student learning conditions. These are our students. This is the conditions that they are learning under. So that's number one. Number two, it is unreasonable to expect that educators should accept a 2.25% COLA. Every district in this area is offering at least a 2.5% COLA, and most of them in their newly negotiated contracts will go up in the years after that. And so to expect that educators are going to accept a 2.25% COLA is unreasonable. Number three, the city of Newton has enough money to settle a fair contract with the NTA. As Dr. Nolan said, there's lots of competing interests in a city. The override didn't pass, and those are all true. And also there's $55 million in free cash. I'm not a financial expert. I don't claim to be, but I've listened to enough finance committee meetings. I've listened to enough people who are knowledgeable to make me firm in my belief that the city of Newton, if this was a priority, could settle a fair contract with the NTA. And finally, it's really impossible to bargain the finer points of a contract when all the conditions are packaged in one large proposal. That just is not something that's possible to do. So those are 4 important points. Moving on, this is the law firm that is was hired by the Newton School Committee to conduct negotiations for Newton. They have advised several communities in the area, including Brookline, Andover, Sharon, and Ashland. And all of those negotiations have followed a certain pattern: elongated timeline, hostility towards educators, punitive proposals or concessions demanded of educators. For example, the taking of dedicated prep time and asking teachers to relinquish control over that. Putting proposals in a package early in the process, demanding mediation early in the process, and in many of these other communities, the negotiations have ended with a teacher strike. So um, the teachers who I talk with frequently, when they found out that this was the law firm that the school committee hired, and they knew from day one that this was the playbook, it didn't feel like they were walking into a situation that that they felt good about. All right, so what next? Here's what's happened recently. On December 15th, 99.6% of the 2,000 educators in Newton took a vote of no confidence in the Newton School Committee and Mayor Fuller. There was a statement made at one point that this is a normal part of negotiations, and no educator that I've spoken to agrees that this is a normal part of negotiations. On December 18th, there was an announcement that new money would be added to the Newton Public Schools budget. And what happened was a big chunk of that money went to capital improvements, which are important. The buildings in Newton, the school buildings, are in disrepair, and I don't think anyone would argue that. But that meant that it didn't go into the operating budget. And in communication from the mayor, she maintained that she was going to remain stable at a 3.5% increase in the allocation for this coming school year. And that is not, Anna Nolan's been pretty clear that a 5% increase is really what it will take to meet all the needs in the district. On yesterday, there was a negotiations. I was thinking that we'd need a negotiations update, but the update at the school committee meeting last night was that there was no update. So what advocacy has happened so far? The Newton Teachers Association has done all of these things. You probably saw them at Farmers Market this summer. You've seen the lawn signs. Many of you have them. There's an email campaign going on right now. You can click to send a form letter to the mayor. All of these things, a huge rally in the spring and the fall. So that's the advocacy that's happened so far. And as the reason we're all here today is because that advocacy has not yet yielded any results. So the main message that that I want people to walk away with is that the allocation to Newton Public Schools is not enough. It's not enough money to give the educators the contract that they need. And it's not enough to meet the acute needs of the students in NPS right now. So I'm going to take this down in a second and answer questions. I know I just breezed through that really fast, but hopefully I've given enough context to help people understand sort of where we are and what what's in front of us. Before I open it to questions, I just wonder if there's any educators who would like to say something. Um, I'm intending for this to be a parent-led meeting, but I do want to give educators, if I've missed anything.
Can I add one? Hi, Sue Cohen, recording secretary of NTA, retired teacher, been doing negotiations for quite a while. I just want to, Allison, it was great. Thank you so much. One thing I want to add to the COLA is that in a number of the proposals, the COLA in particular is still connected to accepting increases, more increases in the healthcare. So just wanted to add that piece.
Yeah, thank you. Did I miss anything else? Okay. Like I said, I hope I covered the main points. In a few minutes, my main goal for this meeting is action, that this is the message that I believe and the PEC believes is the message that needs to get across right now, that we need to increase the allocation. There's 176 people on this call. Some of you are just here for information, and that's great. Some of you, I hope, will be motivated to do some simple things like click on that email to send to Mayor Fuller, encourage people to sign up for the PEC mailing list. Some people, I hope, will be motivated to do a little bit more. But I hope that a lot of people came here today with the idea that they're ready to take some action, because I do feel like that's where we are, that the educators have done all of those actions for the last 15 months, and we haven't gotten anywhere. And this is, I personally, my kids are almost done in public schools, but I care about what happens in the schools. And I think that as a resident, I think it's time for us to be taking more concerted actions. And we're going to have a chance to break up into groups by school, so that people can talk about what kinds of actions they would be interested in engaging in. Okay, now I'll take questions. I love how nobody wants to ask the first question. Robin, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Robin Boger of the Newton Corner Neighborhood Association. I'm curious as to what members of the school committee say when they are asked directly why they are not advocating more strongly for an increased allocation, particularly after some of the heart-wrenching testimony of educators who drive almost an hour each way to come here and teach, and are so dedicated to their jobs. How can they disregard that? And what do they say to you?
Well, I can answer that, but if anybody else wants to jump in, please do. I think there's been a sense that Newton is on the precipice of a financial cliff, and that we can't spend any more money on the schools than we're already spending. And I think there's a lot of elected officials who believe that to be true. There's other elected officials who believe that we can't afford not to spend money on the schools. So I think I think it's the financial cliff, the prospect of this financial cliff that is holding back some school committee members. But again, I don't know that I've asked or received an answer to that. I do see that Chris is raising his hand. Chris, do you want to say something either in response to that?
Sure. I'd be happy to give you some context there. So the school committee, individual members, Anna Nolan, myself have advocated for more funding. I think there's some of us who believe funding has not been adequate over the last several years, and some of us have not voted for our budgets. The city council did not vote for last year's budget. You know, we pushed hard for the city to give us funds that would be sufficient to address near-term problems. And you know, as someone who has you know, had some differences of opinion with the city on funding, you know, I actually believe that the incremental amounts allocated in addition to the 3.5% base level of allocation, you know, is what provided us the ability to put forth our last offer. Had put forth the ability to address Dr. Nolan's entry plan, which includes addressing high school class sizes, which includes addressing incremental supports at the elementary level, in particular for 5 schools who need it the most, which addresses some curriculum development. And, you know, I would like to correct one thing, Allison, in terms of the 2.25% COLA you referenced as the school committee's last offer. So for year 24, the next fiscal year, for those teachers, we have about half of our teachers who are at what's called the top step, which means you've been here for, you have 13, 14 years of experience. You really are just receiving your cost of living adjustment. Then for every teacher moving up that step, there's a built-in 4.25% or so increase, which is, you know, recognizing your increased experience and the like. So for teachers who are moving up that ladder, those steps, they receive that about 4.25% increase. And then in year 1 of the contract, we have offered 2.255%, year 2, 2.255%, and year 3, 2.75%. For teachers who are at the top step and just receiving the COLA, we have offered 2.75%, 2.75%, and 3.25%. That all blends out. It's about a 50-50 mix of teachers who are moving up the steps and teachers who aren't. That all blends out to about 2.7% of a COLA increase. So I think the 2.255% you referenced is slightly misleading. And you know, I will recognize that is ever so slightly below our peer districts, which are come in at about 2.95% or so as an average over 3 years. So I would say, you know, what we have offered is pretty comparable to our peer districts. But going back to the original question, there has been no question that we have advocated for more money. We have received more money. It has allowed us to put forth the offers we put forth and to solve problems that will make a real difference. These are when we talked about this with Dr. Nolan, it was, let's do things that are going to make a difference. Let's not, trim around the margins. Let's do things that will make a real difference. Getting math and STEM classes down from 27, 28, 30 plus kids in a class down to 25, that will make a real difference. In those 5 elementary schools that are going to receive the incremental MTSS support, that will make a real difference. The curriculum support, that will make a real difference. The increased offer to our teachers, we hope would make a real difference. So it's not for lack of advocacy.
Thanks. And thank you for being here, Chris. I think one thing that's felt frustrating is the it certainly wasn't my intention to misrepresent the numbers. And having it corrected right away is really appreciated. I saw a couple of other hands. I don't know if anybody also wanted to respond to that. Anna.
It's Anne, and
Oh,
I
I'm
don't have a
sorry.
reaction to that. Sorry, I got taken away from the screen. My only question was, given the other towns that have recently gone on strike, like Andover and Woburn, is there any takeaways from those have we talked to anybody over there that could give us other suggestions? Because it seems like the postcards and, the emails, it's not really budging. So I didn't know if there was any takeaways because they've already done this and gone down that route. I'm a fan of research, but
Yeah.
I have 2 kids in the high school at North, and I have my husband who's in the middle school. So we're very much invested, and it's awful. And from this side of it, I can't even talk about it without crying because it's really emotional and it's really hard over here at the homestead. So we want this to be over because it's been a nightmare all year. And again, I just speak from my personal conversations with teachers and how much they're working and how hard they're working for those students every day, but they feel like taken advantage of and not respected. And it's time we give them the respect they deserve.
Thanks. I see Jane has her hand raised, so let me see if go ahead, Jane.
Yes, I did not intend to speak tonight, but I did. What is most concerning to me, there's a tremendous amount of focus on the COLA. And in fact, what is most disturbing to me is the package and what it does to the working conditions for Newton educators and how it affects the amount of time that they are able to focus their time and attention on collaborating, planning, meeting with students. This profession is very different from 25 years ago. It is a team sport. And when the time to meet during release time is removed, as the package does, it seriously affects how educators can provide the best education for our students. And I'm wondering if there's any way in which those items can be removed from the package, because they are really not money items.
Thanks. I think, well, you and I both know that from talking to educators that is a very commonly shared concern. I see David has his hand up.
Thank you. I've been frustrated watching this play out in Newton over the last year or so, and with the structure of government in this city, with a strong mayoral position, proposing the budget, the city council approving it, the school committee getting some funds that they're restricted in using to reach a settlement. And everyone kind of pointing their fingers in the opposite direction. We've had an election. There was little change in the school committee composition, but there has been a change in leadership with Member Bresky taking over the chairmanship of the committee. A lot of change in the city council after this election, and a number of councilors I see are here tonight. And I've sat in council meetings and heard them express frustration over the lack of more funds for the schools, particularly as it related to the mayor's proposal for the stabilization fund that was restricted for using money for the pension funding over the next 8 years, with no immediate funds going to the schools. I guess my question is, where's the pressure point right now? Is it all with the mayor? Does the city council have a role? Can the city council really shake things loose? And should we be communicating with the council at this point? Or is it all on the mayor? Because trying to engage someone who has the authority to make this happen is very, very difficult. It's like the city, through its structure, has built a wall around itself and prevented the residents from really speaking out and influencing the direction.
Yeah, I feel that frustration. I don't know if someone more qualified than me wants to answer. But
Well, JJ Kazakov, I can hear. I will try to be quick because I can't speak directly to the situation, but no one, not even Newton, exists in a bubble. A couple of things, which is that over the years, I've noticed that general power between employers and employees sort of shifts back and forth. Oh, then there's a sort of natural back and forth. And usually when the employers are on the wrong side of it, they grumble and know that it's going to be sort of back to them soon. But this time, like, they're pulling back much harder than I've seen before. And that's because things have moved towards employees harder than they're used to seeing. And I think that's important to remember, and important when they just to sort of remember, like, why that's happening. That is part of this isn't just about Newton teachers in the city of Newton. This is part of a much bigger pendulum swinging. The other that I've noticed, just because there's been a lot of strikes across many industries throughout in this year, so we've all had a chance to see some patterns emerge. One is that there's always a point where the corporation, is what it's usually been, says we can't do any more than this, because if we don't, then the corporation will fail. It won't be financially solvent, or it'll collapse, and that's never true. So I think that's just an important thing to sort of playing a long game of understanding context and how these things play out. It's hard to see or experience from the trenches because you're dealing with all the things that people deal with in the trenches. Like I said, I can't address that direct concern, but I think that I zoomed out for a second, as you were.
yeah, no, I think that's really important context. I see two more hands up, and then I'm going to move on. Andrian and then Marbles. Andrian.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, good. So I've recently come to learn that some of the resources that are available to our schools are not used equally between schools. Some schools give parents access to Lexia and STMath, and other schools do not tell us about it. How can we know that the resources, the money allocated for the resources will be used equally amongst the schools? Is there a feedback mechanism that we can check on how things work? Or will there be one? Thank you.
I don't know the answer to that question. I, I'm, I'm not sure that that's in, well, Sue, do you have your hand up?
I was just gonna say that that's a great question for the superintendent. Decisions about curriculum, materials, etc., resources are generally made in collaboration with, it's called the Teaching and Learning Department, which also schedules professional development for teacher or for educators, and with input from coordinators. So it's a great question for the superintendent.
Will we have an answer at some point?
I think it's outside of the scope of this
yeah,
meeting. That
yeah.
was my reaction to the question, but I think if it's a concern to you, that's where I would go with
Right.
that question. I want to take
Thanks.
Marbles.
Hi, Sue Marble. I'm a 30-year veteran teacher in Newton, as well as a parent, a former parent. And I've been sitting here trying to think of how I can censor myself. But so the only thing I'm going to say, for those of you that are new and haven't heard it yet, is the morale is below plant life right now for teachers and educators in Newton. And I've never been so insulted and frustrated with the way that the school committee has treated the teachers of Newton with this whole situation. And, you know, I almost have a rainbow of t-shirts because we always have to fight for what we deserve, and never have gotten a cost of living raise at once ever in my entire career. So I just want to tell you how detrimental the actions of the school committee have been, and still can, like you said, they always seem to be able to get the word out in this way that is not an accurate picture of how the teachers feel and the pressure we're under to do more with less all the time. That's
Thank
it.
you. Thanks. Let's see. Oh, I see a couple of other hands. My goal for this meeting, we do have close to 200 people here. And as I've been saying, the actions so far have come from the Newton Teachers Association, and it's really Newton residents that will be heard by the mayor and hopefully other decision makers. We set up breakout rooms so that people can have an opportunity to connect with other people from their school communities. Can I see from the PEC leadership, do we still feel like this is a good idea for 10, 15 minutes? Yeah. Go ahead, Sue.
Now, I just want to make sure that parents, or not just parents, people in the meeting, if you've had any questions that you are concerned about or you need clarification on anything, this would be a good time to ask. I have to go back to what Jane France had said about the package. this is a very different way of bargaining than I've experienced. I think this is either my fifth or sixth round of negotiations with Newton. And usually it is the back and forth, interest bargaining, you come to compromises so that each side walks away feeling they have won something and accomplished something. And this is very, very different, having everything under one umbrella. So this has been a very different experience. So we appreciate your voices. We appreciate your thoughts. And we just want to be back at the table negotiating with the school committee and have both sides walk away feeling their interests, for the major concerns have been heard and have been, accomplished. That's where we want to be.
Thanks.
Allison, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, please. I'm looking for suggestions. Go ahead, Jane.
Yes, because the hour is getting late. That we had thought about 3 tiers of actions that people can take, and that we can email those to the participants of this meeting and strongly request that that you take one of the actions. They range from someone who would feel extremely comfortable speaking out publicly to someone who wants to just put a lawn sign or do a very simple act. Doing it but taking some action that feels comfortable to you, that expresses support for Newton educators. I would also like to reiterate what Ms. Marbles said about the level of hostility at that we have experienced during this negotiations. I've been teaching since 1972. I finished in 2022 and never experienced anything like this. And they are never pleasant. They're always difficult. There's always a level of anger. But I think this particular set of negotiations rises to a different level. And I think that we should all be concerned. Every parent should be concerned. Every teacher certainly is concerned. Every educator is concerned about that point. But I would suggest that perhaps we send an email and strongly request that you take some small action that you feel comfortable with.
Thank you. I put the link to the slides in the chat, and I will send them both to the PEC mailing list and to everybody who registered for this meeting. All of the links are live, so if it says click here to send a postcard to the mayor, that link is live. There's a link that has contact information for city councilors and school committee members. If you have questions about, yeah. And I'll reiterate what Jane said, that, the hope is that I looked through the people who registered tonight. There was a big group from Ainger. There was a big group from Mason Rice. There was a big group from Horace Mann. So please find the other folks from your school. I think what I'll do is I see just a couple more hands. So let's see. Ashley has her hand up and Kara. So let me call on Ashley, Kara, and I saw David had his hand up. And then I'm gonna wrap it up.
Hi, I'm Ashley O'Connor. I'm a parent from Ainger. And I just want to let all the teachers know that we support you. But also some of the Ainger parents were talking about possibly asking for a meeting with the mayor and then having like a whole bunch of parents show up to the meeting with signs and, supporting. But we need a way to like get in touch with other PTOs and other parents to facilitate that. So I don't know, Allison, I think we had, Bridget had emailed you,
Oh,
but I don't know if we
yeah.
can start a chat like that somewhere offline, but we were talking about doing it next Wednesday, during the school day. So the mayor knows it's parents showing up and not teachers, that we're, invested in our teachers too. So I don't know if we can start that chat offline, if Allison can help facilitate it, but that's what I
Sure.
want.
I think if if any group would like to initiate an action, I would be delighted to amplify it. And so Ainger School, if you end up doing that, let me know and I'll amplify it so that other groups can join in. Uh, Perhaps it could be distributed through PTO Council. Um, if if a group from one school wants to initiate something, I think that would be great. And Kara.
Hi, my name is Kara Knudsen. I'm a Missouri parent, and I was going to say a similar thing. It sounds to me like I'd be really interested in understanding if there's some political reason why we haven't heard more in a leadership guiding way for to address Action 3, organizing as a group. The only way I found out about PEC in the first place was because the PTO at our school made a note to include that in one of their emails. And I was so pleased to have any connection at all to getting an understanding of what things were being said outside of the mayor's emails. So I know I'll bring it up to my PTO as something that I think that we could try to figure out a way to coordinate a larger group effort. But that seems to me to be a really straightforward way to involve a lot of people at once. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. David, are you still here? David Bidar, I saw your hand earlier.
I am. Thanks for the opportunity. Good to see everybody. And just a huge thank you. So I'm David Bidar, teach history, Newton North. Know many of the wonderful parents on this call, and just I think we're so just seeing the numbers and seeing people on here is one thing that definitely boosts morale. So I think I speak for all of us when I say deeply appreciate it. I put some things in the chat earlier, trying not to get too angry. So I thought maybe writing it versus speaking it aloud might be a better call. But I appreciate you give me a chance, Allison, to say first, the kinds of comments earlier I found really distressing. So while I think it's fantastic that we have not just parents and community members, we have city officials on the call, and I appreciate that. I also found that disconnect kind of shocking, to be honest. And frankly misleading. I thought it was very disingenuous to have what struck me as kind of a immediate defense, which I think should be telling to any voters and to anybody living in Newton, that someone would come in and immediately sort of defend coming in a smidge lower than competitive districts. The disconnect there with what I've heard, and I think many of us on this call have heard in numerous public comments at numerous school committee meetings, it just really says a lot to me. It's really, I think, doing a disservice to the public to actually mislead and mischaracterize in that way. And I think it is it's misinforming. It's not in good faith. And I just flatly, I'm just so unbelievably sick and tired of hearing at these meetings that we have been bargaining in good faith when you have dozens and dozens of people saying, no, you have not. It feels more than just an issue of low morale. It seems like something is structurally problematic. And yes, whoever asked before, what's the pressure point? It's the mayor. Also, that should be the school committee's job. You should be advocating for the schools. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. I see Sue's hand up, and then the hour is getting late, so
Okay.
we will wrap up. So go ahead, Sue.
I just want to, just looking at the chat, and I just want to clarify just a couple more things about why it's been so difficult to bargain with this all-in-one proposal. One of the things, and this is not just in our district, this has happened in Cambridge, Andover. One of the things that seem to be the school committees are advocating for are adding more days of work, also extending the length of the day and the length of the work week without additional pay. So it makes it very difficult to negotiate like this when there are a number of what we call punitive proposals in there, along with proposals, we would love to continue to negotiate with them. And thank you all for being here. So wonderful. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks everyone for coming. I think there's a lot happening with these negotiations, and it's sort of like revealing some issues that really need to be addressed in our city. I don't have all of the answers, and but I think the first step is talking about it. So thank you everyone who came. I will follow up via email, and I'm available to connect people. Just reach out and I'll try and connect you to others who want to join in on actions with you. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
And
you, Allison.
thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.